Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to be here. I sincerely appreciate that. So you have a QR code there. If you want to get in contact with me, that's my LinkedIn. I do check that frequently. So you want to connect if there's anything that I can do to help, something here that in our conversation today that resonates with you, or you want more information, please feel free to reach out. So today's topic is developing critical thinkers in the preschool classroom. I've been working with preschool children for 25. I worked with them. I stopped working directly with them for 25 years. Right out of high school, I got into working with preschool children. I loved it. I really had the time of my life. I was paid to be a child again, and that was unforgettable. One of the patterns that I saw while I was working, and I worked school districts, Head Start, early Head Start, nonprofit, for profit, private. The different approaches, different pedagogic approaches that they had was I saw a gap in the way that children were learning, and that gap was more of critical thinking. So today's conversation really provoked my whole teaching experience and pedagogical approach to young children and how I work with adult learners now. So part of my task of researching is educating future educators and how they work with young children. And today's conversation is hopefully going to provoke um, some reflecting on your end to see how can we better prepare children for the future. Um, you can see all my bio and whatnot in LinkedIn, and let's get right into our conversation. So our objective today, we're going to examine, develop, and apply the topic that we're talking about is critical thinking. Now we're living in a world of AI, and here we are, right, in a virtual space, attending to you all from all parts of the city, state, country, worldwide. AI can do great things, but it can also hinder a lot of our thinking process. So, through our objectives, we're going to examine the impact of children's development. So, again, this is geared for young children. You can apply this knowledge from as early as infants all the way up into the third grade with this early childhood education. We're going to develop some practices that uses strength base, and I'm going to be full transparency with you guys. I was a horrible student, and my my parents weren't happy with me, and a lot of it had to do with my language barrier. I was born in Mexico, La Piedad, Michoacan. Shout out to all my paisas. Coming into this country not knowing how to speak English was a challenge. And then when I started going to school, my teacher didn't speak English. My first grade teacher, I didn't go to kinder, I didn't go to preschool. So my teacher would always have a blast calling me out and calling my parents. And man, it really bothered me. So when I was working with children, I always like using a strength-based approach. So I'm gonna share with you what the strengths of Jorgito, the strength that he has in his learning ability, and I'm gonna tell you how we can help him get over that little hump. Unfortunately, my teachers didn't have that. So in today's conversation, we're really gonna hit hard with that. And then we're gonna apply developmentally appropriate practices. Again, I had a horrendous experience. My teachers, bless their hearts, not to rain on anyone's parade, but they didn't have the developmentally appropriate practices with their instruction. It was, again, a one size fits all. Either Jorgito got it or he didn't. And regardless of what type of learner I was, to them, it was like, hey, we got to move on to the next subject. To this day, I am a kinesthetic learner, which means I have to be moving. You were to tell me to sit down, hands in front of me, feet on the floor, looking straight ahead, good luck. You're going to lose me in 3 seconds because I can't do that. And I usually catch myself when I'm doing workshops, presentations, what have you, is I'm always moving around. Right now, because of the virtual background, I get a little bit more flexibility because you can't really see how much I'm moving, but I'm constantly moving. But that's the type of learner that I am. Um, I can do a podcast. I can drive and listen to sports radio and visualize in my mind what's going on. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a visual learner. An auditory learner, I would say I'm pretty good at that too, because again, I can listen to a sports game and in my mind see exactly where the play is going, the direction of the field. But most importantly, I have to be moving. So developmentally appropriate practices talks about understanding your learners and knowing how you are going to grab those learners to help them understand and conceptualize what we're talking about. So if you're a kinesthetic learner like me, start moving around. That's fine. When I was a child and I really wanted to learn, I failed to understand that I had a support system, right? I always took it upon myself into saying that, well, if I'm the student, I have to really understand and conceptualize everything that's being thrown at me by my teacher, regardless of my language, regardless of my support at home. I had to get it. And unfortunately, I didn't. I struggled a lot in school. Um, I, I think it's pretty safe to say I don't think my high school is going to revoke my degree, but I graduated because I was a sport athlete and I was pretty good at it. So it was important for the coach to help me stay eligible to play. And I made it. After that, I struggled. I struggled a lot in college. I went to East LA College and I started leading more on my teachers at that time, really understanding that, hey, how can you help me get to that point that I want to get into? At East LA College, I did meet one of my mentors who to this day I still every now and then shoot her an email. We have contact on LinkedIn, Dr. Tamar Andrews. And she told me straight out, she said, what do you want to do? And how do you plan to get there? So I told her my plan at that time, and she goes, good luck, man. She said, I believe in you, but I don't see it in you. So I apply that when I was working with young children is how can I see them? How can I help them get what they need to get to be successful? Young children are dependent on adults, right? So I have to get into in a collaborative relationship with the parents to really help them come on board. They had my support. We had the child. So we developed this triangle, the three corners of success, right? And no matter how you shift the triangle, every corner is just as important. Think of this as being the groundwork, the foundation to your child's success. Think about yourself. How do you see yourself where you're thriving more as a student? I have some students here in the call, and thank you for being here. My question to you is, how successful do you think you would be without having your teacher or your professor's support? How successful would you be without your family support? Now, granted that your family is not doing the research for you, they're not taking the tests for you, at least we hope, right? But you do need them for support, right? Some of us, we still depend on our parents, we still live with them. We're there to have that emotional support. So we really need them, right? Thank you, Rosario, for the chat. You need to have a support system to help you get there. Now, as an adult, you can substitute teacher for a mentor, for a professor, for a colleague, someone that you look up to. And if you can't find one, go back to my QR code and send me an email and let's talk. I want to be your cheerleader and help you get to where you want to get to. So it's important for us to have these support systems to help us get to where we need to get to. Now, if we work together, the three of us, and you are a teacher, now you're going to have family, you're going to have yourself, the child, and me, four of us working together to have a stronger foundation to help children get to where they need to get to. All this, we're going to apply it to Benjamin Bloom's taxonomy. And those of you that have taken any of my classes, I love theory. And some of you are like, no, don't get into this, but we're going to get into it. Bloom's taxonomy talks about the different types of approaches. So he says that in these tiers, there's different types of thinking that happens, right? All the way from remembering, which is the bottom tier, to the top, which is creating of new knowledge. So we need to really understand that children and every one of us, we have our funds of knowledge, right? We come into this world, we come into class with previous knowledge, and those are our funds of knowledge. Think of funds of knowledge as being your own bank account of knowledge. The perspective you bring, the lens you bring, your positionality is based on you, on where you stand. Young children need our help to help them get higher and higher in their cognitive process. So where we want to get to with young children is to create their own knowledge. Now, I also apply this to my college students, and sometimes they get really upset with me because they want to sample, because they want to see someone else's work. And they ask me, well, what do you want from me? And I always tell me your perspective. And that's a challenge. And I'll tell you why it's a challenge. Through my research, I found a big pattern and correlation to a child that's been told for child that went to kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, 13 years of their life, they've been told what to do, when to do it, how to do it. All right, boys and girls, here's a chalkboard. This is what we're going to do. This is what I want you to do. And I want you to do it this way. And I want you to put this, and I want you to include that. And then you should have this. So everyone has the same pattern. That is what we call a one size fits all, meaning that everybody thinks the same way, everybody learns the same way, and everyone puts out the same thing. Not going to say any names, but I did work for one of the biggest school district in the state, the second largest in the country for 16 years. And the constant battle that I had with administrators there was, why can't we do things different? I had a local superintendent once came into the school that I was working in, and the conversation was, why do things look different here? At that time, I was in Southgate. Why do things look different here in Southgate than they do in the Valley? My response was, because we're different. The response that I got was, well, no, every if I walk into this classroom at 10:15, you should be doing, I'm just going to throw a subject on reading. You should be doing reading aloud. Everybody should be on the rug. Everybody's reading the same story. If I walk to any other classroom at 10:15, everyone is reading the same story, asking the same questions, the same way. If I were to drive out to the Valley, they should be doing the exact same thing. I remember just feeling infuriated by that. And my question was, do you think children all learn the same way? Do you think that all teachers teach the same way? My response, the response that I got was, that's a directive, Mr. Ramirez. And I was baffled. That was the beginning of me really diving into Bloom's taxonomy, to thinking, what type of learners are we creating if we think that they all learn the same way, they all think the same way, and they all produce the same work? So now you get to college, right? And you happen to go to East LA College, go Huskies, right? And you happen to take one of my classes. And I tell you, write a reflective paper on your teaching philosophy. And you ask, can we see a sample? And I tell you, no, you cannot see a sample. I'll give you a rubric. And then you say, so what do you want me to write? And I tell you, well, look at the rubric. If you're looking at Bloom's taxonomy, what I am challenging you to do is to create your philosophy. And if you don't have one, great, we'll develop one. I am not asking you to remember anything. I am not asking you to understand certain approaches. I'm asking you to evaluate your teaching practices, to analyze your approach to teaching, and then create a philosophy. And it's been a struggle. Now, the correlation that I see there is that for the past 13 years, again, you've been told what to do, when to do, and how to do it. And then when you get into the higher ed, you are challenged to write a reflective paper, and that becomes very daunting because you haven't been given that opportunity to think on your own. So you pass my class, you go to Cal State LA, and here I am again, right? Like, oh my gosh, not again. And I ask you to write another reflective paper on your perspective into how your culture sees abuse. Can I see a sample? Can you show me someone else's work? What do you want me to write? I don't know. I don't know what your cultural background is. I don't know what your childhood experience was like. Again, using Bloom's taxonomy, when I'm asking you to evaluate your past experience to then create a reflective journal, becomes very daunting because you've been told what to do, when to do, how to do it. This isn't a knock on anyone else. This is the research that I've done. This is some of the findings that I found through my research that motivates me to say, well, you know what, this conversation needs to take place to our future educators. Because if we really want children to think critically, living in a world of AI, we have to show them how they can create their own knowledge, how they create their own learning processes. right? Thought I saw something in the chat. Let me see. Oh, Alejandra went to Southgate. All right, Alejandra, shout out to Southgate. I'm not sure what the mascot is over there. So higher order of thinking skills, we're going to come back to Bloom's taxonomy real quick. Higher order of thinking skills talks about the top three: create, evaluate, and analyze. When you think of Bloom's taxonomy, use the acronym HOTS, higher order of thinking skills. So if you happen to have any crayons or markers or paint around you, I want you to go get them. Okay. And then if you don't, that's fine. Just we'll go through this thinking process together. When I was in the preschool classroom, a lot of the time, some of my assistants that worked with me didn't want to work with me. And they always say, like, you just make things so hard, Mr. Ramirez. And I say to them, now I just challenge you to think. And sometimes thinking can be hard. So at my easel, in my class, indoors or outdoors, I only had three colors of paint. I only had red, yellow, and blue, intentionally. One time a parent came to me and said, hey, Mr. Ramirez, if you need other paints for your easel, I'm going to go shopping this weekend. I can donate some. And I said, no, it's cool. We got it. Don't need other colors. We got this. And he said, because I noticed, we're in May and you still only have three colors at the easel. And I said, that's intentional. Think about this, okay? If you have those three colors, I want you to create other colors, only using those three. And please use the chat if you would like, or you can unmute yourself. But can somebody tell me, how do you make orange? Does anybody know how to make the color orange?
Red and yellow?
Red and yellow, my two favorite colors. Yes, mixing red and yellow. Now, we're adults, right? We know and we understand that kind of comes to us automatically. But think of a 3-year-old that hasn't had that opportunity to explore with colors. And at the easel, they have red, yellow, and blue, and they happen to accidentally mix red and yellow. Now, from my experience, when I'm standing by the easel early in the year and this happens, the reaction of, and then they look at me like, like this big revelation. They just made this big finding. What did you find, Jorgito? Teacher, I made orange. The sense of ownership, the sense of achievement, accomplishment of like, I did this. And I'm deep down inside, I'm jumping up and down like, yes, exactly what I wanted. And how did you find orange? And it's like, I don't know. Ooh, in my mind, I thought, good. We're going to go back to 600 real quick. Can you remember what you did that helped you create something? Now, first time exploration for young children, they're not going to remember that this is what we call scaffolding, right? As educators, we want them to get to the creating part of Bloom's taxonomy, but we got to pick them up. So I'm going to come down just a little bit and start asking more questions. Never use the WHY because that's the one that they achieved later, not in preschool. So it's like, okay, Jorgito, so what colors were you using? I got red and I got yellow. And then what did you do with red and yellow? So we're trying to backtrack everything that they did to help them come to that realization, right? Oh, and that excitement hits them again. Yes, red and yellow make orange. And again, I'm jumping up and down. I say, great, can I take a picture of you with your orange? Yeah, better yet, what if I just record this? And then I show this to your parents. At Pacific Oaks College Children's School, I worked there for 2 years, about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And when I would send these recordings to the parents would come back saying like, this is priceless. Like, this is like, wow, we must have seen this 100 times. And I thought I should have put it on my YouTube channel and then gotten all those views again. That's not going to happen, right? But the reality is that parents began to see the connection and the intentionality behind only using three colors, right? Now imagine Jorrito goes to the east and there's orange. How much thinking takes place there? Would you be able to get that same reaction? Would you be able to get that same excitement for learning and exploration and creating? Or it's like, oh, here's orange, right? This was a conversation I had with one of my assistants was, can we just put all the colors here? And I said to her, no. But we ordered all the colors. We can save a lot of money moving forward if we just order red, yellow, and blue. And that's it. Because schools are always talking about budgets, right? Hmm. So think of the cognitive demand, right? Again, coming back to Bloom's taxonomy. When you're giving children that opportunity to create, where are they on the pyramid versus the low cognitive demand, where they're just pretty much getting it to them? With crayons and markers and color pencils, those they do have access to all of those because that's not necessarily where I want to get them to. I want them to explore with paints. Watercolors is probably the best one, but you have to have the right paper. You have to have that watercolor paper to get that experience, especially when it starts to bleed into each other on its own and children are just watching and waiting. That's one of the most exciting opportunities that I had as a teacher when I was in the classroom to see. So think of, again, primary colors being a higher order of thinking activity versus the low cognitive ones, which is just pretty much giving them. Now we can apply this same approach into how us adult learners learn. We open up our chat GPT and we generate a reflective paper on child abuse. Boom, it gives it to you, copy and paste it. How much thinking was there besides you asking the question, right? Versus, how can I create something? Right? Like primary colors versus all the colors of the rainbow. Cognitive demand versus low cognitive demand. No. The materials that you have intentionally will provoke certain type of thinking. The work that you are given at college, it's the same way, right? Just not equivalent to primary colors, but it's supposed to challenge you. It's supposed to provoke some form of frustration and different types of feelings that then you're going to be able to create your own work. So the goal with HOTS is always to get to the highest cognitive demand as opposed to the lowest cognitive demand. Part of that conversation with that local superintendent was, hey, using a theoretical lens, using Bloom's taxonomy, wanting to get children to create their own learning experiences, how can I get there if we're all doing the same thing the exact same way, from the exact same instructions? And it was like, we'll figure it out. And that was an open challenge, and we figured it out. And it's like, cool, well, we're going to use that as a tool, and we're going to have more open-ended instructions to then allow children to create their own. Now, guess what? It's not all going to look the same, but the cognitive demand is there. I did have parents that wanted, hey, why is my child not doing the rainbow in the hemisphere? Why is the rainbow all over the place? Well, developmentally, that's where your child is, right? And developmentally, I look at your child's drawing and I say to myself, these are the areas that I need to help them work and develop to get them to that point. Because I know and understand that there's a lot of pressure when it comes down to this kinder readiness mentality, right? Or TK readiness. We'll get more into that in a bit. Questions on HOT, higher order of thinking skills. Again, use the chat or you can unmute yourself. Okay, so funds of knowledge. Again, we all come with funds of knowledge, right? When you allow children to bring in their funds of knowledge and then create more, they're constructing, right? That's the constructivism approach, is understanding that every child will build knowledge based on their ability, right? So learning is built based on their experiences, which again, if you've taken any of my classes, you probably ask yourself now, like, that's why the reflective journals are there. Yes, that's why they're there. So you can create your learning process that then makes it more meaningful to you based on your past experiences that really hits your zone of proximal development. Your zone of proximal development is where you have the highest cognitive demand. The synapses in your brain are thoroughly connecting and everything is making sense to you. Now you can have a presentation without having any notes because you got this, right? With young children, they can tell you how they generated those colors because their zone of proximal development was stimulated. They constructed their own learning ability. And guess what? Now their funds of knowledge grew. I'll give you an example. This is a heartbreaking example. Early in my career, to my defense, I was working on my, at that time, I was working on my master's, my graduate studies at USC. And one of the tasks was to record children building on their funds of knowledge. So this is why I like doing the primary color example, because that's what I did. I had them do a triangle, ironically, right? Corners red, corners yellow, corners blue. And then I want you to those take two corners and have those two colors meet in the middle and then mix them and see what color you get. And then do that to all of them, to all the kids. And guess what? Everyone's work looked the exact same way. Everyone had the same thought process. Everyone had the same directions, and everyone's was very nice and neat because that's what I wanted. Like, yes. But then I forgot Jorgito. And there's Jorgito. Always wanted to do things his own way, always wanted to take learning to a whole different level that I was never ready for. He got his colors, and I said to them, when you're done with this, then you can go work on whatever it was. There was a different activity that was assigned to them because they wanted to do the recording. Jorgito wanted to get to the next activity, so he gets his paper with the three colors and he does this. Teacher, I'm done. Can I go play now? And I was like, dude, no, you can't go play. What did you do? And I was upset. I was upset. I was disappointed. I was being recorded. And I'm thinking like, oh, now I gotta re-record this. And dude, but look at my group. My group was really good. I'll figure something out. So I'm talking to him. This is not what I asked you to do. I'm trying not to make it loud so the camera doesn't hear me, right? This is not what I asked you to do. Remember what I told you? I told you you needed to have the colors touch and get a new color. And I remember what I was saying because I'll get to the ending. Gets his paper and he walks away, puts it in a dry rag, washes his hands. I don't want to play with that anymore. He just left and went somewhere else. I was upset. I had him come back and clean the table after I stopped recording. Hey, Corito, come here. You got to help me clean up. You made this mess. You got to come and help me clean up. Again, this is early in my career, so please, no judgment. He was crying. He's, I hate doing work with you. You always get mad at me. Just clean up. And after the fact, it was during nap time. After the fact, I said, hey, come here. Come and sit down with me. Let's talk. Sorry that I got mad at you, dude, but man, you gotta follow directions. When I tell you to do something, you gotta do it the way that I'm telling you to do it. And he was like, what did you want me to do? He was very articulate. What did you want me to do? And I said, I wanted you to mix three colors to then come up with another color. But what did you do? And he goes, teacher, you said you wanted orange. There's orange. You said you wanted purple. There's purple. And you said you wanted green. And he starts crying. There's green. And I'm like, wow. He did it his way and got the same result that I was looking for. I was heartbroken. Parents came in, I told them the story, and the mom was like, oh, it's okay, he has to follow directions. That was the beginning of me understanding that there's different routes to get to your goal, right? The process for all of our learning is very different based on our funds of knowledge, on our zone of proximal development, and how we build knowledge. Nonetheless, all of that takes place. That was the beginning of me saying, you know what? I really have to take back my approach to teaching and make it more child centered. Because if children are going to be successful and are not going to turn out the way that I was at that time, where everyone needed to look the exact same way, everyone needed to do the exact same thing, and everyone needed to follow the exact same rules, then I needed to change the way that I was teaching. And I did. And that's why you guys all have reflective journals now. Jorgito helped me understand that his funds of knowledge took a different route to get to where we needed to get to. He met the goal because he found the three other colors. He understood what the objective of the activity was, and he was able to articulate how he got those colors. I did ask him, well, how did you get green? Anybody know how to make green? How to make green?
Blue and yellow, I think.
Blue and, yep, yeah, yeah, blue and
Yeah,
yellow. Blue
yeah.
and yellow.
I'm on
Anyway.
the road.
You're on a roll. Yeah, blue and yellow. Blue and yellow make green. How do you make purple?
Somebody got to help me now.
How
Red
do we
and
make
blue.
red and blue? Yeah, red and blue. Red and blue. Red and blue make it. Yes, these children were given that opportunity to really dive deep into their own learning. And as a teacher, I understood that I didn't know it all. I had to humble myself to understand that he was four. A 4 year old can teach me how to be a better teacher, right? And that was the beginning of me like, okay, this has to change. I have to apply more theory into my teaching. I have to be more intentional and I have to be more receptive to know that children can learn very differently. So these funds of knowledge really comes into allowing you to build on your previous knowledge, right? And construct it, make it meaningful to you. Regardless of where you're at right now, you can get to Disneyland, right? And there's different ways to get to Disneyland. I don't care how you get there, just get to Disneyland. I'll meet you there at what time? We'll meet you there at noon, right? Now imagine if we all drove the exact same way and you're thinking, well, wait, I'm in West Covina and the 5 freeway is way out there and it's much more heavier. Why can't I just take the 57 and then exit Ball and then go west on Ball until I find Disneyland? Nope, you got to take the 5. Yeah, but the 5 is going to take me all around. There's more traffic. It doesn't matter. You got to take the 5. It's the same thing that we do when we tell children that they have to do the exact same thing, the exact same way, and have the exact same output. Using Bloom's taxonomy tells you just get there. Just create your route, but get there. So, best practices. According to the National Association for the Education of Young Children, best practices focus on children. It does not focus on a one size fits all. This is where you really have to challenge yourself into what your teaching philosophy is, how you want them to learn, right? Because again, I think I'm pretty good auditory learner, but I would rather I play it safe and I'd rather be a kinesthetic learner. I'm sideways and then I'm gonna be facing the other way because my body has to be moving. That's the way I learn, right? There was many times in my preschool classroom where Jojito would sit in the back and his feet would be doing this. Hey, stop. And I start reading the book and his feet are still doing this like crisscross applesauce. I don't know about you, but if I say crisscross applesauce, it takes me a while to get up to my knees start hurting. And they're like, ay. But here I am telling children to sit there, crisscross applesauce, or raise your hand and wait till you're called upon. For a 3, 4, and 5 year old, really? There's other ways of doing that, but we're not going to get into that, right? How do you differentiate your teaching? You differentiate that based on the child's ability. I'll give you an example. Those of when we're in college, if we're at a community college level, you're not expected to research at a graduate level. It's unrealistic. If you have the skills, great. But if you don't have those skills, then there has to be a way of how to scaffold that. So you know how and what to meet for those expectations, right? If you're at a graduate level, then I have to hold you to that level, right? And I have to help you understand that that is the level, and this creation of knowledge is very different than the creation of knowledge at a community college because it's different phases. With young children, it's the exact same way. You can't expect them to write their name, to know the letters, to know the sounds when you've never talked about them. Here's a prime example. Use your words. What words? When children don't have the language, right? And if you're available tomorrow, stop by my social emotional development. That's my other area of research, and we'll talk about that. Best practice also talks about respect. Children, they deserve respect because it's their right. It's their legal right. So you can't tell them that learning has to be a certain way because then that's a violation of their rights. You can't do that. And I learned that in my experience with Jorgito with the mixing of the colors, where I was thinking, can't believe I violated his rights. Like his way of learning was hands on, and his creation was very different. He took a very different route, but I wanted him to stick to one. I wanted him to follow the route that I was telling him. Didn't serve him any justice. Didn't foster his development. It wasn't even child centered. It wasn't equitable to him because I wanted it all to be the exact same thing and understand the difference between equitable and equal. That's a big difference. And I can't tell all the children, you all have to do this the exact same way. But I can tell you, here are your boundaries. This is what you need to include. How you do it, completely up to you. Just make sure you include these things, right? And make sure that your teaching always has an inclusive approach. You have to be able to include everyone's ability. This is where it does get complex. If you're going to work with young children, it is crucial for you to know child development theory. You can't come into this profession thinking that I'm just going to take care of kids. It doesn't work that way. Let me tell you, as someone that worked in the field and now is a researcher for the field for 26 years, you have to know theory. You have to know how children learn and those different stages they go through developmentally that then provide you to say, this is where they're at. An example with that is with parents. Parents would always say, hey, you know what? I want my child to write their name. Why aren't they writing their name? And it's like, we'll get there. All I come in and all you're doing is using Play-Doh. Yeah, Play-Doh develops fine motor skills. Fine motor skills is what helps you grasp a writing tool. Play-Doh helps you develop hand-eye coordination. Hand-eye coordination helps you write your name. I did it to the parent. The parent said to me, you sound very condescending now, Mr. Ramirez. And I said, not my intention. I'm sorry you feel that way, but I am telling you that it's important for you to understand where your child is developmentally to get them to where we need to get to. Because again, if we're using Bloom's taxonomy, we want them to create their learning. I can't just have them be an autopilot or a robot and just do this automatically. Now, I know you guys are all good people. You're not like me. I was I was something else. I wrote a lot of standards, especially in junior high and high school. You're probably not familiar with standards because, again, you're all good people. Standards is where you misbehave. It was like, I will not get out of my seat. And I had to write that 50 times. And for whatever reason, the teacher thought after I write that 50 times, then I'm not going to do it. When I was done, I stood out of my chair without asking for permission, right? What I learned from those standards was how to develop a pattern to get this done as fast as we can. When young children are given their name with the yellow highlighter or the dots, that's not learning. That's developing a pattern. That's finding the shortest cut to get to what you want. Again, if we use it using our theoretical lens, that's just remembering, not even understanding what you're doing, because from my experience, I don't understand anything. I just wanted to get these standards over with. So best practice will tell you you have to know and understand where children are developmentally, what they can and can't do or should and shouldn't be doing cognitively to then be able to build those funds of knowledge to get them ready for the next phase. The best way to do that is always using open-ended questions. I love using open-ended questions. So here's a challenge for you. On the chat or unmute, tell me an open-ended question. Open-ended questions. Anybody know what an open-ended question is? Ask an open-ended question. Go for it, Del R.
Hel- Hello, Professor. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. Thanks for asking.
Wait, that was your open-ended question? You're asking me. You're asking me a specific question with a specific answer.
Uh, well, I tried.
You did, yes, you did.
maybe,
I
maybe
appreciate you.
somebody else know. Okay.
So as you're thinking about this again, use the chat. An open-ended question does not have a correct answer, or not necessarily. Um, it allows children to share their perspective without the pressure of being wrong. It has to be open. Sandy, you were going to say something?
Yeah, one of the questions that I ask in at work is, tell me more about that, or what happened next.
Tell me more about that or what happened next. Okay. And then there's okay, Sandy, I'm gonna hold on to that one. And then Taya wrote, what do you think will happen next in the story, which is similar to what Sandy asked. Marie said, what was the best part of your day? And Taya again wrote, how did you build your block tower so tall? So Sandy, Taya, and Maurice, the questions you're asking, ask for a specific thing, a specific answer. If it asks for a specific answer, it can't be open. This is what Ruth said. What did you do today that you are happy or proud about?
Okay, I
It's
get it. It's more of a key open-ended question.
very open in the way that it can go anywhere, right? And then you would use your scaffolding skills to bring them back to where you want them to get to, right? It's not a thought-provoking question. There isn't any intentions behind it to get a specific answer. So I'll go through this. So for example, when Taya asks, what do you think will happen next in the story? If that story is already predetermined, there is going to be a wrong answer if you don't predict it properly, right? I'm asking you what you think, but the answer is already predetermined. So then it's not open-ended. Marie said, what was the best part of your day? So then I have to think back to my day and highlight what the best part of it was, right? Again, it's specific. Taya then asked, how did you build your block tower so tall? I have to give you some steps that will give you that that you're able to reproduce those steps to give you the same outcome. Maria put, what do you think will happen if we add more blocks? Ooh, how many is more? Right? Now it becomes more open because more can be two. More can be one, more can be 10. If you're like me, I'm gonna try to pile them all up and then we'll see what happens. I just can't wait for it to drop, right? Amanda put, what is your favorite color? What is your favorite color? So Amanda, when you're asking that, if you were to ask me what was my favorite color, can I take it anywhere I want, or are you asking me to find one specific answer? Amanda's going to give her some time to respond. Maria, why did you pick these colors? So remember, working with young children, why is usually the last question. There's usually a question you don't want to ask because they'll ask you why a million times, and you're like, I just told you why. Um, It's usually not the one that is best to answer. Um, what were you thinking when you picked those colors? Oh, I'm going to say, yeah, because it might change throughout the course of the year. You ask me my favorite color, every time 100% it's red, right? So again, open-ended questions can be very, very tricky, but they are the most thought-provoking that allows them to create their own knowledge. So how do we connect AI, which is where we're at now in regards to higher order of thinking skills? Well, AI, you can use it as a cognitive partner, but as long as you're using ethics. And here's where I advise you to make sure that you are following your institute, your employer's ethical avenues before you use AI. It'll help you evaluate in a collaborative manner, not just giving you what it is, and it's going to help you analyze, investigating the why for young children. Why? Well, let's get our electronic device and try to figure out why. So here's your final question that then you can venture off for the rest of the day and really think about. If you're a teacher, or if you have children, or if you want to work with children, what is your goal for them in your classroom? Do you want them to be a copy machine, a computer, or code writer? The copy machine will copy exactly what it has. The computer will do exactly what you tell it to do. And the code writer is the one that develops the code. Here are my references. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, and if you want to be in touch, here is my QR code.